Roll credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. Made with a little help from AI, so double-check your facts. Today, we're diving into Euphoria Season 2. Did you know some scenes this season were shot on actual film to give it a more cinematic, raw look? And before we get into it, drop a comment with what we should cover next, old or new.
Yeah, that actual film detail is, it's just the tip of the iceberg, really.
Oh, totally. I mean, imagine creating the most visually stunning, highly discussed show of the year, right?
Yeah.
But you do it by intentionally breaking film chemistry and like pushing actors to punch solid floors for hours.
Right, and completely abandoning any sort of financial reality for teenage high fashion.
Exactly. So today we are unpacking the beautiful, agonizing, and honestly pretty tense reality of Euphoria Season 2.
It's a heavy one.
It really is. We've pulled from this massive stack of behind-the-scenes reporting, technical interviews with the cinematographer, deep dives into the music supervision. Basically, we want to figure out exactly how this show executed such a massive tonal shift.
Because it is a massive undertaking to pivot a show's entire visual and emotional language between seasons like that. I mean, looking at the source material, you don't just stumble into a tonal shift this dark.
No, definitely not.
It requires a ground-up reimagining. It changes the physical mechanics of the set, the costumes, and, honestly, the psychological demands on the cast.
Right, so let's start with those physical mechanics. Because building on that mention of actual film from the intro, the literal lenses they used just completely altered the show's DNA.
Oh, absolutely.
Like creator Sam Levinson and the cinematographer Marcel Rev, they just threw out the visual playbook of Season 1. They traded that contemporary high-def digital realism.
Which was shot on massive Alexa 65 digital cameras.
Right. They traded all of that for this incredibly nostalgic, kind of heavy, memory-like feel.
And they didn't just use standard motion picture film for that either. They went to extreme lengths, like almost absurd lengths.
Wait, really? What did they do?
Well, they decided to shoot the season on 35mm Ektachrome 5294. And if you're a photography buff, you probably know that specific film stock was actually discontinued in the early 2000s.
Oh, wow. So how did they even get it?
Kodak literally had to reopen their vault. They manufactured a couple thousand rolls of this highly specific film exclusively for the production.
That is insane. I mean, wait, let's unpack this for a second. Why go to all that trouble for a discontinued film?
It's all about the texture.
Right. But if Season 1 was the high-def reality of being a teenager, does making Season 2 look like an old memory fundamentally change how you relate to the characters?
I think it has to.
It reminds me of, like, finding an old, slightly damaged vintage photograph in a drawer. It's beautiful, sure, but it inherently carries this sense of melancholy, like a distorted memory.
That sense of a distorted memory is the entire point, honestly. But capturing that look created immense technical nightmares on set.
Because it's an old film stock.
Well, specifically because Ektachrome is a reversal stock. So if you process it normally, it creates a positive image right on the film, like a slide you'd put in a projector.
Okay.
But Levinson and Rev, they chose to cross-process it. They ran it through chemicals meant for negative film.
Hold on. So if it's meant to be processed as a positive and you develop it as a negative, doesn't that just break the film's chemistry, like destroy the image?
It fundamentally breaks the intended color science, yeah. But that's the magic of it. It creates this wildly contrasty kind of green-tinted negative.
Oh, interesting.
But doing this drastically reduces your exposure latitude to only about 4 or 5 stops. Think of latitude like a tightrope. Digital cameras give you this wide safety net, you know?
If it's too dark, you just fix it on a computer later.
Exactly. But with cross-processed Ektachrome, that tightrope is razor thin. If you lean an inch too far into the shadows, the detail is just gone entirely.
Wow. And if they step into the light.
Their face blows out to pure white.
So how do you actually film a dynamic scene if the margin for error is that incredibly small?
You bring artificial suns onto the set.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they had to use massive amounts of soft fill light just to maintain a base exposure. For night shoots, they were mounting these 18K Aramax lights, which are blindingly powerful on giant construction cranes.
Just to get enough light into the lens.
Literally just so the film wouldn't be pitch black.
Yeah.
And even then, what they captured on set was a contrasty green mess. It required surgical color grading by Tom Poole, their colorist, to pull out those unique creamy colors you actually see on screen.
They didn't just jump blindly into this, though, right?
Yep.
I read they used the pandemic hiatus to test it out.
Yeah, they shot 2 standalone bridge episodes just to experiment with these specific stocks and lighting tricks.
Before committing millions of dollars to it. Makes sense.
which was necessary because this choice dictated the behavior of everyone on set. Shooting on 35mm film with massive lighting setups, it physically forced the crew to move with intention.
Right, you can't just leave a digital camera rolling for hours while actors improvise.
Exactly. Film is expensive. Every single take matters. That sluggish, heavy intentionality behind the camera translates directly to the screen. It perfectly mirrors the fragmented, heavier storytelling.
That physical limitation dictating the mood is fascinating. And because they were chasing this romanticized fantasy on film, that ambition spilled over into the wardrobe department too.
Oh, massively. Heidi Bivens, the costume designer, completely abandoned the realistic budget constraints from season 1.
Yeah, the teens have no money, reality is just gone.
The fashion became completely unmoored from reality. She leaned entirely into high fashion.
We're talking high schoolers walking the halls in actual couture. Like Cassie is suddenly strutting through the school in Prada.
Lexi is wearing Miu Miu.
Yes, and Maddie gets an entire sequence sneaking into the closet of the wealthy woman she nannies for, trying on vintage Dior and Mugler.
Even Fez's grandmother gets a custom suit.
Right, that royal blue suit by Amber Doyle with God's Word, God's Will on the back. It's stunning, but and I have to push back here. Does dressing high schoolers in vintage Jean-Paul Gaultier break the immersion for you?
You know, you'd think it would.
Right. Isn't it a bit ridiculous for a show dealing with such gritty subject matter?
It sounds ridiculous on paper, but it actually reinforces the emotional reality. Bivens is using clothing as an external manifestation of a character's internal state.
Okay, so it's not literal truth, it's emotional truth.
Exactly. Passy wearing Prada isn't about her bank account. It's about her desperate need to project a flawless image while she is completely unraveling internally.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense. It treats high school as this mythic life or death battleground, which is how teenagers actually feel.
Exactly. But this is where the reality crashes into the fantasy. This immense ambition, the 35mm film, the blazing hot lights, the couture, it created a real pressure cooker environment.
Right, the on-set drama. When you combine intense material with a demanding physical shoot, boundaries are going to be tested.
The sources highlight creative clashes between Barbie Ferreira and Sam Levinson, for instance, over the direction of her character, Kat.
And didn't she allegedly storm off set at one point?
That's what the reporting says. Consequently, Kat's screen time was drastically reduced this season, which is a huge contrast to her arc in the first season.
It really highlights the tension between a showrunner's singular vision and an actor's ownership over their character. But we saw other actors pushing back too, right?
Yes, navigating that highly exposed production environment required real advocacy.
Like Sydney Sweeney. She advocated for herself, asking Levinson to cut nude scenes she felt were unnecessary for Cassie. And, to Levinson's credit, the reporting notes he immediately respected those requests.
Minka Kelly drew a similar line, too.
Right, she plays the mother Maddie nannies for.
Yeah, and there's a scene where Maddie helps unzip her dress. The original plan called for nudity, but Kelly refused. She argued her character needed to maintain a specific maternal role model dynamic for the scene to work.
Which makes the scene so much better. Just as the characters are under pressure, the actors are asserting their boundaries in this vulnerable environment.
And we can't overlook the sheer physical toll either. In the premiere fight between Fez and Nate, Angus Cloud hit Jacob Elordi with a sugar glass bottle.
But sugar glass still has mass, right?
Oh, absolutely. According to both actors, it genuinely hurt. And to capture the violence from different angles, Cloud had to physically punch the solid floor for 3 hours straight.
3 hours. Wow.
He mentioned his arms were wrecked for days.
And think about the schedule. Filming the New Year's Eve party took 2 full weeks of exhausting night shoots, from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Or Sydney Sweeney spending 2 entire days physically climbing in and out of a bathtub for her hiding scene.
When you have exhausted actors pushing to extremes at 4 a.m., you need something to keep the energy alive. Which brings us to the sonic landscape of Season 2.
The music was crucial.
Yeah, because music wasn't just a background layer added in post-production. The composer, Labyrinth, literally moved his studio onto the physical set.
Which is highly unusual. Normally, a composer works in isolation, looking at an edited scene months later.
Right, but having him there, absorbing the tension in the room in real time, it completely changes the DNA of the score.
The music supervisor, Jen Malone, said Labyrinth's pop-up studio naturally became a hangout spot for Zendaya and the cast.
It fostered this incredibly organic collaboration. That's exactly how the Emmy-nominated song I'm Tired was created, right?
Yes. During the deeply emotional church sequence with Zendaya, Labyrinth was practically scoring the emotional beats in real time alongside the actors.
But alongside the original score, the needle drops this season were basically psychological Trojan horses.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You know when you hear a song and it instantly teleports you back to a painful high school memory? The show uses these catchy, nostalgic pop tracks to sneak past your defenses and deliver devastating blows.
It's the weaponization of nostalgia. Take the origin story for Cal in episode 3. It's a 15-minute sequence set entirely to INXS's Never Tear Us Apart.
It's basically a massive music video.
It completely recontextualizes his youth and his current toxicity. The music does so much heavy lifting that Jen Malone had to work directly with the INXS estate just to clear it.
Because the narrative just wouldn't function without that specific song. And then there are the deep cuts. For episode 5, Malone had to clear a Sharon Cash cover of Fever.
That clearance process sounds like a detective novel.
Right. Why go to all that trouble when you could just use a generic 60s track?
Because a generic track wouldn't trigger the specific, suffocating frequency required for the scene. That cover has this claustrophobic energy that scores Rue's internal canic perfectly.
But the record label only existed from 1967 to 1969.
Exactly. Malone's team was literally scouring obituaries and digging through white pages to track down the heirs just to get legal permission.
That dedication pays off, especially when the storytelling completely shatters into meta-commentary. Which leads us to Lexi's play in episode 7.
Our Life. The play is the ultimate collision of all these theatrical elements. It was actually inspired by Maude Apatow's real high school experience.
Where she produced a play and everyone hated her for taking it so seriously.
Yeah, exactly that.
It is the ultimate meta-commentary. Lexi takes control of the narrative, and she uses theater and music to forcibly reflect the other characters' trauma right back at them.
She traps them in their own spectacle, which is exactly what the creators are doing to us, the audience.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and the peak of that aggression is the dance sequence. Austin Abrams spent 3 physically exhausting days filming that homoerotic lip sync to Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero.
It's a direct theatrical roast of Nate's toxic masculinity performed right to his face.
It uses spectacle to puncture his violent facade.
Yeah.
But notice the structure of the season. We have all this massive theatricality, the 35mm film, the vintage couture, the stage play.
This towering artifice.
Right. But to make the emotional climax land, they had to ruthlessly rip all of that artifice away. Which brings us to episode 5, Stand Still Like the Hummingbird.
The rawest nerve of the entire series.
Everything stops. We move directly into the unvarnished, ugly reality of Rue's addiction.
They strip away the visual gimmicks. The camera work becomes frantic, almost documentary-like. The show forcefully prevents you from looking away.
It opens with that blistering, relentless 17-minute sequence. Her mother and sister, Gia, confront her about relapsing.
And Rue just detonates.
She goes on a destructive rampage, spewing the most horrific vitriol. She realizes Jules is listening in the other room, and she tells Jules she wishes they had never met.
And her descent just accelerates from there, limping through the streets, vomiting from severe withdrawal.
She is physically vibrating with panic, and it culminates with her going to Lori, the drug dealer, and desperately saying she wants to die, just for a hit.
It's agonizing.
It really is, which poses a difficult question. At what point do you stop rooting for a protagonist actively destroying everyone around her? Because Zendaya won her 2nd Emmy for this, making history, as the youngest and first Black woman to win lead actress in a drama twice.
Undeniably deserved.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But how does she keep us on the hook? How does Zendaya make us stay with Rue when Rue's being a monster?
The genius is that she never loses sight of the terrified child underneath the monster. She provides the critical context for the cruelty.
Right. Even when she's screaming, her eyes convey this deep humiliation.
Yes. The remorse of someone trapped inside a disease. And the show lays the groundwork for that empathy earlier on, like the drug trip where she hugs her late father in the church.
She's just clutching his jacket, sobbing with this bottomless grief. Because we see that pain, we understand what's driving the addiction.
The show demands radical empathy. We are forced to look at the ugliest manifestations of addiction and challenged to still recognize the suffering human underneath it.
In episode 5, the vintage fashion and the film stock all fade into the background. The raw human performance anchors the truth.
It's a heavy journey. We went from the romance of cross-processed film to the reality of withdrawal.
It's a massive emotional spectrum.
Which leaves us with a lingering question.
Yeah.
If they intentionally shot on analog film to look like a nostalgic memory, whose memory are we actually watching?
Ooh, that's interesting.
If it's ruse, how much of the high fashion glamour and extreme trauma is the objective truth? And how much is the exaggerated distortion of a deeply unreliable narrator?
Wow, that completely reframes everything.
Yeah.
And that wraps our deep dive into Euphoria Season 2. If you enjoyed unpacking this darker chapter, follow roll credits and share it with your fellow fans. And don't forget to drop a comment with what movie or show we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more intense moments.